It's the signal that you're about to come into crypto summer, which happens to coincide with the presidential election years every time. And it also corresponds with what I call the everything code cycle, which is the debt refinancing cycle, which is the macro cycle. They're all the same thing. So you get this kind of powerful dynamic of politicians giving out free candy because they're going into an election, stimulus. You tend to have a liquidity cycle because of the business cycle, because they have to refinance the debts of the governments. And you tend to have the Bitcoin halving, which is a reduction in supply. And that's why these periods get really quite exciting.
Cryptocurrencies have traded little in 2 weeks. Most crypto assets are down more than 10% after reaching multi-year highs this month, according to new data. The first demand and price growth included Bitcoin ETFs. After 10 days of rises with negative to flat flows, prices are down despite pullbacks. Industry expects Bitcoin Hing 2024 at midnight Eastern Standard Time on April 19th. Experts expect Bitcoin and other digital assets to achieve historic highs after the Hing. On X, senior Bloomberg ETF specialist Eric Balunas denied recent Bitcoin ETF flow criticism. Eric expects ETF demand to surge after their sabbatical. Some of the post implies ETF groupings fall off after a large jump. This speed is crucial after 5 days of 12% price declines. Second, interest has declined marginally after 5 days. Since beginning, the 10 has lost $223 million, $1% of net inflows and 0.4% of assets. Third, the new 9 have seen $330 million in the last 5 days, with BlackRock's EBIT making it 67 days. Bitcoin drives that net sum. Eric also thinks crypto experts selling their Bitcoin at fresh highs prompted the 12% drop. Bitcoin has gained 144% since June and 47% this year, outperforming other asset groups. Eric Real Vision CEO Raoul Pal is optimistic about Bitcoin and other cryptos. Pal thinks Bitcoin prices will rise 54% to $400,000 before the cycle finishes. Altcoin Daily asked the famous macro analyst about his 2024 crypto bull market predictions and crypto asset predictions. Quotes from interviews follow. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, comment, and enable future video notifications. You boost YouTube's algorithm and channel growth. Thanks, and enjoy the video.
Flip between it going up and it going down. But what we do know is the supply of Bitcoin from the miners will halve. So over time, there's less new supply, and therefore the supply has to be met by existing participants selling. Now, considering about 60 to 80% of all Bitcoin holders don't sell, they just hold, there's actually quite limited supply around. So when you add in a kind of macro bull market, it tends to then tilt the supply-demand imbalance wildly in favor of demand. Not enough supply, too much demand. Add the ETF in, and that adds more FOMO. It's easier for people to get in. And before you know it, you start building this banana zone cycle. So the halving itself is a non-event. It's the signal that you're about to come into crypto summer, which happens to coincide with the presidential election years every time. And it also corresponds with what I call the everything code cycle, which is the debt refinancing cycle, which is the macro cycle. They're all the same thing. So you get this kind of powerful dynamic of politicians giving out free candy because they're going into an election, stimulus. You tend to have a liquidity cycle because of the business cycle, because they have to refinance the debts of the governments. And you tend to have the Bitcoin halving, which is a reduction in supply. And that's why these periods get really quite exciting.
If/when the Federal Reserve cuts rates for the first time in years later this year, what will that mean for crypto?
I think it's been anticipated by the markets. But it just, at top level, if you think of most people who've got credit card debts or mortgages or interest payments on cars, it just makes everybody's life a little bit easier. And if you've got a little bit more discretionary spending, you might be able to put it into the market. And so at the margin, it'll help. I mean, obviously, it would help a lot if rates went down to 2%. Are they going to get there or not? Certainly not this year. Maybe next year. Depends what happens to inflation, depends what happens on a number of different levels. But really, it's not interest rates that actually drive the world. It's liquidity. Liquidity is the money that the central banks put into the system, often in conjunction with the government, to try and generate economic growth or drive markets. And we bottomed in liquidity, I think, again, last time we spoke, back in November 2022. That was the bottom of the liquidity cycle. It happened to be the bottom of the crypto cycle and bottom of technology, because those are the forward-looking asset classes. And going forward, my work suggests that liquidity should continue to ease all the way into 2025. So therefore, if we've got rising liquidity against this backdrop, it should be positive.
In the conversation, Pal says that there is still a lot to look forward to before the bull market ends in 2025. One important part of the bull market that the former Goldman Sachs executive is really looking forward to is the start of altcoin season. According to Pal, altcoins will have an incredibly bullish season after a top altcoin makes a new all-time high. Like in previous cycles, Pal thinks that top altcoins like Ethereum, Solana, and Dogecoin will do better than Bitcoin. Another big event that Pal is looking forward to is the end of the central bank's policy of tightening and the start of QE again. Pal says that 2024 will be both a crypto and a global summer, which means that the markets will have more money to trade with. Pal talks more about his hopes for crypto assets during the bull market in his interview with Altcoin Daily. He especially talks about what he thinks will be the next big story for the bull market. He also gives cryptocurrency investors important business advice that they need to make the most of this huge chance. Here are some more film clips.
How I back this out is two different ways. One, I just look at the log chart of Bitcoin. That trend, you can extrapolate it, and somewhere around 2030, it'll be $1 million. That sounds as ridiculous today as it did when I first bought it at $200 and I put a price projection of $100,000. I said it's actually going to $1 million, but I'm going to discount myself for being an idiot by 90%. So it cost $200. It could go to zero at that time, certainly, because that was 2013. But my price projection's 100,000, and people said this is ridiculous. I said it's the best macro trade of all time. So the $1 million doesn't seem that preposterous. The other way I back it out is when I look at the adoption of cryptocurrency. So you use as a proxy the number of active wallets. Now, we all know that's not a perfect proxy because people have multiple wallets. But you compare that to IP addresses for the internet, start them at both 5 million. Now, people have multiple IP addresses as well. So it's very similar. It's just directionally gives you an idea. Crypto is growing at twice the speed of the internet in terms of adoption. So it's the fastest adoption of any technology and any asset class the world has ever seen. So if we just assume that growth slows, as it did with the internet, because once you get bigger and bigger numbers, it's hard to grow at such a rate. So it goes from, let's say, 175% a year where it's been trending and goes to 43% a year, which is what the internet did from year 8 onwards. Well, crypto gets to 1 billion people by the end of next year, 1 billion active wallets, and it gets to 4 billion by 2030. Well, at 4 billion, the price will certainly be $1 million. So it kind of backs out from the adoption of the technology and of the log chart, because the log chart basically is the adoption of the technology.
Raoul Pal's Don't This Up thesis is mostly about the risks of using leverage. According to the famous macro analyst, this is one of the biggest mistakes a cryptocurrency investor, especially a new trader, can make. Pal thinks this is already the best chance the world has ever had, and prices will still go up a lot over the next few years, even without leverage. He thinks Bitcoin will reach at least $1 million per coin. Please share your thoughts on Raoul Pal's interview and his overall outlook on the cryptocurrency industry in 2024 and beyond. You can join the conversation by leaving your thoughts, comments, and observations in the section below. Also, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications to get more videos like this. Thanks for watching.